Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Rebecca Allison. I'm the Chief Operating Officer here at the NZTC, Aberdeen-based not-for-profit company, very much focused on development of technology across the energy sector. And I'm delighted to be your host this afternoon for this OGV Energy Live event on the theme that is dear to my heart, asset integrity. So for those that do know me in the industry, I started off my journey with NZTC as the Asset Integrity Solutions Centre Manager and have now looking at it across the whole energy piece. OGV Live is an interactive show which aims to deliver news and insights from the energy sector by bringing to life the UK's leading energy industry publication, OGV Energy Magazine, which I'm hoping most of you have seen and read. This month, we are delighted to invite an array of expert guests across over 3 sessions to discuss some of the key topics in this space. And we are delighted to welcome, as part of our session 1, Grant Blackby, the Lead Integrity Engineer at Ithaca Energy, and John Lilly, Operations Director at EMUA, the Engineering Equipment and Materials Users Association. That doesn't trip off the tongue very well, John, I've got to say. So, as we kick off this session, I would like to introduce Grant. So please tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do at Ithaca.
Yeah, afternoon, Rebecca, and thanks again for the opportunity. My name is Grant Blackley. I'm the Lead Integrity Engineer at Ithaca Energy. I've been with Ithaca since we officially moved from Chevron. So historically, most of our assets are Chevron based. So I think we're now one of the leading operators in the UK basin.
Okay, and John, could you introduce yourself from EMUA?
Thanks, Rebecca, and thanks for the invite. As you said, I'm John Lilly from EMUA. I'm Operations Director, so I cover most of the output from EMUA. EMUA is a not-for-profit engineering organisation that works with nearly 70 corporations around the world, and what we do is we get all the experts together and then distill out good practice, and that good practice has been adopted around the world in a lot of the key areas.
Very timely in the sense of good practice, and that's what I want to take us first. And we are talking about asset integrity today over the next hour or so. But what I want to start with is around the guidelines piece, the industry guidelines. And there's a lot of guidance, there's a lot of organisations and associations in this space. And I know from my time working more hands-on in this space, you've got the Energy Institute, OE UK, Hoyce, and a few of and you're obviously yourselves, John. So Grant, as from an operator's perspective, what is the importance of these guidelines and how Ithaca and some of your peers really benefit from these?
Yeah, so I think that we see quite a lot of challenges with a number of areas within integrity, and there's a lot of opportunities at the moment. There's there's a lot of change with digital integration, and there's a huge amount of leaning towards that. And obviously, there's a huge uptake for the use of AI in various forms. But as an operator, our responsibility is non-delegatable. So if we adopt any technology, we need to have balances and checks in place. So governance and assurance, we need to be really confident as an operator that when we adopt these technologies, that they're integrated correctly within our procedures and our strategies throughout the business. But then it's also an element where we've got to be able to provide the boardroom and key stakeholders within the business confidence and structures to be able to adopt any of them technologies at pace. So I think a bit that kind of gets often overlooked is the importance of these independent bodies that support at various levels, and there's quite a lot of overlap, or there's a lot of perception there's a lot of overlap, but the jurisdiction in which a lot of these independents operate has a massive bearing on that. So we have the likes of John can kind of explain, but with Amur, we're focused on the engineering and the energy industry quite a lot. So we have a lot of opportunity to learn from other industries, the nuclear, etc. But then we've also got the Energy Institute, and again, this is a global. The Energy Institute operates globally, so guidelines that they provide are on a global basis. And then I'm co-chair with for Asset Integrity Task Group for the OE UK. And again, that is a locally more UK North Sea orientated organisation that then provides guidelines on a for local companies and local jurisdiction. So all the operators kind of have fingers in various pies, but when there's a guideline that affects all of us, being able to adopt, say, digital twins and being able to utilize contextualization through them means a lack of guidelines really stumbles the operator to be able to deliver that at pace. And then guidelines also support us when we're going to the board or when we're going to various parts of the business to explain how we're going to integrate that into our systems. Without them guidelines, it's really hard for us to then demonstrate to the HSE confidently, and rightly so, that we've got safe control and management of our equipment offshore. We can't just go into these things. And I think there's often an overlook where we want to adopt this technology really, really quickly and at pace. There's value to it. But without that governance and assurance and that change within the business, it's really hard to do that. And I think that's the opportunities we've got with some of these really good bodies and supporting them.
And that brings me to then, John, because you guys are obviously working across different sectors and seeing different challenges, and then certainly maybe are the guidelines evolving as we are evolving in the energy sector across the different challenges and newly emerging different sectors? And is there work still to be done, or is there a big gap that needs to be filled to make sure that these guidelines and associations like yourself can actually help the end users?
Yeah, I mean, we are driven by what the end users, the owner operators want. So we won't do anything unless our stakeholders tell us to, essentially, that we're driven by their needs. And that can be multi-fold, really. Often it comes down to safety, efficiency of what is being done, and compliance with laws and regulations. That's critical because our members will be visited by regulators, and we want to prepare the sites in our membership as best they can for those types of interactions. So we look for gaps, that's for sure, and we've looked for gaps time and time again. For industrial alarm systems, there was no guidance on how to manage complicated high volume alarm systems, so we introduced Amur 191. And also the complex scheme that many of you may know, that was Amur brought together all the key stakeholders, mainly in Aberdeen, to produce that scheme for competent electricians working offshore. I think that's in the tens of thousands of people now who are certified. It really has rolled out globally. In terms of new gaps, one recent one has been leadership. and often engineers are sort of catapulted to senior leadership roles and the board. So we've been doing a lot of work to produce support for those leaders in the high hazard area. They could be a leader of a site or an organization, but it's sometimes a challenge to get the benefits of safety over at the sea level. So that's one of the challenges that we're addressing with the member companies that we have. The other challenge is the people coming into engineering roles across the world is changing dramatically. It's not the traditional apprentice, technician, or degree entry. There is a shortage in people going into the industry. So we're currently preparing quite a few initiatives around the STEM side to really make it attractive and inspiring to go into the industry, especially when people are choosing their sort of hires and their A levels. The other thing we're doing is trying to really produce more awareness materials for people coming into the industry. So they might have the raw material skills and talent, but they don't really know much about functional safety. So we've got to give them an introduction and get them going so they can move into these day-to-day roles and be effective within organizations. So that's some of the things. We're doing a lot of work on AI and industrial cybersecurity. They're two of the main themes that we are looking at. AI, I think, as Grant said, comes into practically everything. You know, I was just reviewing our AI work, and I don't think there's a technical committee. We have 12 technical committees. Everyone is looking at some area of AI. It also affects industrial cybersecurity in addition. So I don't think there's any massive gaps at the moment. I think we do complement each other. What Offshore Energies UK are doing in the Energy Institute, they have a different focus. Ours is really bringing together the experts from industrial high hazard companies and figuring out what else is needed. Sometimes the standards aren't there. I mean, on industrial cybersecurity, we now have probably loads of standards, should I say. 5 years ago, there weren't any industrial cybersecurity standards. So now the challenge is being able to extract what is useful and what to apply. 5 years ago, it was how many people do we need on industrial cybersecurity? It's a mystery. So things have moved on and the needs then start to change.
Perfect. And Grant, just touching on the skill sides of things, I mean, again, as an operator and obviously relying on the service industry, as you guys do, are you seeing this as well, that some of the skills specialists were moving into the newer technology? So we have guidance that help, and you touched on the faster adoption. Is the supply chain ready as well for that, and the skills to support some of these new emerging technologies, which are very digitally focused? So yeah, are you seeing anything in that space that's maybe causing concerns?
Yeah, I think that the challenge is making sure we don't have the cart before the horse, because inherently with integrity, it's all built on trust. We don't have a product that we provide. Everything's built on trust. So unlike sort of fabric maintenance and repairs and stuff like that, there's an end product that you end up delivering. But for us, it's all trust. And if we don't get some of this right, and we start utilizing, so there's a lot of service companies offering a lot of technology. But if we blindly go into using it, and then we get caught out. So one thing that we're really heavily working on at the moment is our security and control of our data. So we've got an ongoing project guideline that we're working with Energy Institute on, is setting up big data essentially for AI, for the use of AI within the integrity space. And that's a really big challenge, because we know that most operators, we all have historical assets. The data is all fragmented, but understanding how AI works and how the tools work it's really good at polishing rubbish data and presenting it as good data. So not being hoodwinked or being sold something that's snake oil from a service company. Like if you go back a number of years with rope access, like when we start to look at the companies that are providing rope access, how many service companies are actually IRATA members nowadays? That they, in a contract, will provide you that with a service saying they can provide rope access. But a number of these companies aren't IRATA members. Back 20 years ago, you wouldn't get to work with an operator unless you're an IRATA member. And I think we do need to take a little bit of caution, but we also need to move at pace. And we need to move at pace with confidence and assurance that what we're doing and how we're doing it is right. And like John says, is getting the right people in the room, having them discussions with the experts. And let's face it, we know integrity, but we don't know cybersecurity, we don't know IT. And IT departments and the guys that are IT based and their experience in IT don't know integrity. And that's the challenge, is being able to both speak the same language and understand that the outputs you're getting are the right outputs. So having good guidelines, having good governance of your data is vital in our ability to scale and drive this at scale, to see the benefits in it. Because we see that with UAVs for many years. We've seen UAVs being used for 20 years or something. It took us so long to adopt it properly offshore. But half of that was because the operators had no guidelines that they could turn around and go, who do I use? How do I use it? And I'm using a regulator that I'm not familiar with dealing with, unless it's for a helicopter flying out to the asset. We didn't deal with the CAA, and then it was left for the integrity department to really drive that technology and the use of it. You're now seeing beyond visual line of sight, flying from SCATSTER and flying from other places to do emission surveys, which is fantastic that we've got there. But without the likes of Hoist building guidelines in so that operators could follow them, we couldn't do anything. So I think that's the same for all the digital technologies. The guidelines are there. The operators can then adopt them. Then we can have confidence in delivering that at pace. And we then enable the service companies to succeed and not set them up for failure.
No, I totally agree. And obviously, for the work that we do, we try and tackle some of those challenges of bridging that gap between the technology and the emerging technology and how they can be adopted in a pragmatic manner. Sticking with you, Grant, and then I'm going to jump over to John on something else, but just sticking with a sort of taking it into another angle. How do we raise the profile of asset integrity within the operation of an asset? Because certainly in my experience, and even now when you talk to people, say your asset integrity, it's almost like, oh my goodness, yeah, we're not really interested in that either, you know. And I do get sometimes people say, oh, you're not talking about rusty pipes again, are you? So how do we raise that profile to make it actually is just important as part of the operations of an asset?
So a big part of that is auditing. So having good auditing processes within the operators can enable a lot of feedback and learning within the business. So then again, that builds trust, and then it again improves your systems to enable that. That's quite an important mechanism within the operator, because we don't just use auditing to find the faults. We also use it to champion good processes and drive them through the business where it works. The other part to that is when we start to go to digital, this is areas where we never had the ability to demonstrate savings. And if you want operations and you want boardroom to buy into new technology, you have to consider, when you're selling and when you're taking on new technologies, how to document your current projections and costs so that you can then identify where the improvements and everything is from. Because when you do manual UT, you don't really have much to go on. There's just some NDT results. When we take pictures, there's not much improvement. Everything's marginal gains with integrity. So it's really hard to be able to turn around when someone turns around to us years ago, and I used to be in Singapore, and I remember when the USM Go's first came out for the NDT techs, and the companies that were selling them were just like, right, we want all the rope access companies to have these. They're going to save you so much time on the ropes. They're going to save the operator loads of money. You're going to get loads more done. You don't need to have all this other stuff. And you're going to get more done. At the end of the day, the operators didn't see any improvement because it was a marginal gain and it was impossible to track. All we ended up doing was getting more done because we had so much stuff we weren't getting done. And I think it's really important that you manage and measure that in a clear way, working with the service companies to be able to say, right, okay, well, if we implement digital twins, how on each asset are we going to manage and are we going to be able to demonstrate a POB saving? What is the current plan for the next 3 years? And that's what that budget is and built into. How are we going to make an improvement now that we can then project the saving across the next 3 years? Because at the end of the day, it will change and we won't be able to demonstrate the saving. It will be gone. And we will have replaced a rope access inspector by sending out someone to do some painting. And we won't be able to realise that. And I think that's one bit that we really, as integrity, we're really, we're always looking for something that's wrong because that's our job. But when you're in the operator side and when you've got companies trying to sell everything all the time, you've really got to understand on how you articulate that up the hierarchy, how you get that to the boardroom for people to understand. And that's through numbers. When people can see projections where your current projection is at a certain level and you've bought budgets in because of that, how do you demonstrate that the things that you're changing and the things that you're going to provide are going to either make that go up or down? But you've got to be clear and you've got to be honest about what you've found because people have got to trust you.
Definitely trust, and hopefully, we will see it coming up the agenda a little bit more in its serious consideration because it's not just a cost element. Hopefully, it's seen as an integral part of daily operations, which we all know it is, but sometimes it's hard to get the buy-in from others that are not as close to it. John, I'm going to jump to you just on because we're coming to the close of this part of the session, but and this is obviously a bit of a takeaway for people that are listening or watching online. And hopefully I'm not just going to take you out off guard here, but hopefully, what does good look like integrity today? Asset integrity challenges have been around for a long, long time. I've been in the industry a long time, so that's why I can speak about it with experience. But yeah, what does good look like today? What are you seeing that's looking like good practice?
Well, I'll come to that. I'll try and answer it. Just to echo what Grant's been saying, we have launched this Asset Integrity Leadership Certificate, which is a 4-month course designed to equip leaders of asset integrity for all the challenges they have on influence, negotiating, lobbying, communication, because we do think there's a gap there. And the members have come up with this plan. It's based on a competency framework. So I think that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to fill gaps. In terms of what good looks like, usually that's the HSE or another regulator referring to it, which they regularly do for a number of our guidance documents. I think 191 is important. It's probably one of my favorite EMUA guidance documents, but I'll give you an example of some of the challenges now. So AI, all of this selling of it is about time. It's about saving time. All right, it's everywhere on every application. You look at alarm management, you got 40,000 alarms on your plant. You've got to look at how to manage all that efficiently. But we're seeing some companies, they try and rationalize their alarm system, but they have no alarm systems management philosophy document, which is the business group standard to how you design, specify, and manage all the alarms. You can't do it without an alarm philosophy document. So I think one of the risks in the sort of AI implementation, and it's everywhere AI being implemented. I mean, it's not about to happen. It's happening now. Is how that is managed and the context, the background to why you need to move to an EMUR 191 benchmark standard. You need to understand the why before you get into the how. So I think that's a bit of a risk. The other risk that we're seeing, we've done some work on that recently, the absorption and the integration of the risk profile of using AI into the company risk assessments. That's very important because there is a risk, but it's how you bring that into the traditional risk assessment and how you evolve it. Essentially, decision making is always going to be there. Humans will always need to make decisions based around mechanical integrity. It's, as Grant says, but you've got to be able to trust the data and these online real-time dashboards that you have. Trust is really critical for that. And yeah, I'd echo that. In terms of how good practice is evolving, if you look at EMUR 247, which we recently released, it's about interpreting the vast volume of data that comes out of an in-service robotic inspection on an above-ground storage tank. So we've looked at that. We know what can come out of it, but as the owner operator with the responsibility, how far does that get you? What else do you need to do? What do you need to compare it to? How can you make those efficiency gains from those in-service inspections? So all of our work is going into those areas now.
So thank you for that, John. And I am conscious of time and I do need to move on to the second session. So Grant, hopefully you can stay around because I know that some of the conversation might be relevant, or also you can chip into that, and the same with yourself, John. So I would like to say thank you guys, and I am going to close this session. There are a couple of questions come through, but hopefully we can pick up those through the rest of the sessions as well. So thank you very much, and we'll be moving on to session 2.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Cheers. So moving on to session 2, I'd like to invite Andy Norrie, Head of Sales and BD for Europe for Stats Group, Jason Brown, CEO of Elements, and Neil Shanks, Integrity Operations Manager at GDI. So welcome, guys. So
Afternoon.
I will do similar. I will get you to do a quick intro, and then I will jump into some questions. So Andy, please introduce yourself.
So afternoon, everyone. I'm Andy Norrie, Head of Sales and BD at Stats Group, based in Aberdeen, looking after Europe. I've been with Stats for about 15 years in a few different roles. At the moment, I look after our BD team, supporting the likes of Grant with any potential issues they may have in repair and maintenance scenarios.
Perfect. And over to you, Neil.
Yeah, afternoon, everyone. I'm Neil Shanks. I'm the Integrity Operations Manager at GDI, focused on digital asset management. Again, working with Grant fairly closely on a lot of this.
And Jason.
Yeah, thanks, Rebecca. Afternoon, everybody. Thanks for everybody joining us online. So I'm Jason Brown, CEO of Elements. We're an industrial software company focused on subsea integrity and inspection.
So that does lead me nicely into some of the conversations that Grant and John sort of touched on, and that's digital, which is always the forefront of all of our conversations now. And I am not going to confess to anything other than being quite ignorant in the AI and cybersecurity space. But over to yourself, Neil, because I know GDI work very closely in the digital space. And where are you seeing the technology? Because I want to sort of focus into the technology. Where are you seeing the digital playing and moving the asset integrity space forward?
Yeah, so I mean, that's directly what we're working on at GDI right now. So we've got our main platform Vision, which effectively is a photo representation of the offshore assets with a model built behind it, really opening a lot of some of the topics that you were talking about with Grant and John earlier on. So the opportunity to move things remotely, so you're removing risk to personnel offshore by them not needing to be offshore. And also you're able to pictorially represent a visual output of your findings, so that you can convey that to your management. You can actually get them to understand what the condition of their asset is and try and help them to push forward.
And then Jason, over to yourself, because we've very much focused on offshore topsides integrity, and especially digital in the subsea space has been probably at the forefront and is, sort of your bread and butter. So what learnings can we do from the subsea space into potentially the topsides, and maybe vice versa, because I know you've got a topsides background as well.
Yeah. So probably talking a little bit to what you were saying, Grant, as well, and please jump in there as well. So subsea's always been, it's never been about being the most digital, if that makes sense. It's about being the most integrated. Yeah, and I think that rings true for the future as well. So yes, you need the latest technologies, but it's how you actually work with your data, you gather it, you trust it, is an important word that Grant used as well. Yep, so integration, I think, is for the future as well. So that, I think that's a learning for topsides. And something Grant said really hit home about trust as well. So value in subsea's always been co-created. So Rebecca, you understand that, and we all understand how inherently difficult it is, with the kit that's down there. So it's always been co-created as well. So I think the future, we're going to see more collaboration, less competition. Yeah, if that makes sense, and moving forward. Not to play to GDI as well. GDI will say there's other twin providers out there, but what Subsea can learn from topsides is how to actually take that value of the visual representation as well and actually start saving big costs, because again, we inherently understand the OPEX cost with actually going subsea and inspecting and repair and maintaining as well.
So Andy, over to you, and potentially when we're talking about data and we're talking, and it's come up a few times, trust.
Yeah.
How do we trust the data? What's Stats Group doing in this space that maybe can help us understand the trust element?
Well, I guess probably everything we're talking about just now, we're perhaps a little further down the line. We tend to come, in the sort of more of the repair and maintenance side once, the guys have identified issues that need to be addressed. But I think, trust is highly key. For those of you that know what Stats do, provide sort of temporary double block isolation equipment, make, areas safe for repair and maintenance. So obviously we have to trust our equipment. More importantly, the operators have to trust our equipment. So yeah, very key for us, but maybe in a slightly different way than the sort of digital planning, digital twins and stuff that was touched on earlier on.
So we've talked about data, and Grant touched on it as well about adoption. So again, to yourself, Andy, what's some of the barriers to some of this adoption and innovation? We know, is it generally technology? Is it mindset? Or is it actually the process, the integration? I think that Jason's talked about it in the guideline side of things. So what are you seeing from your perspective of some of the barriers?
Yeah, it's probably a mix of all three, to be honest, Rebecca. But again, speaking from our side, some clients are more adaptive to accepting new technologies, or potentially not even new technologies, just technologies that they, as an operator, or they as a client, have never used before. So that can be a challenge, and like that's on probably a share of everyone. That's on the operators and their panels and their technical authorities, etc., that are reviewing what they're trying to achieve. It's on us as a service company to be able to support that and provide them with all the data and the backup that we know what we're doing ultimately, and then legislative bodies, etc., making sure you're fully approved to be used in the various facilities. I think so. It's kind of a bit of a blend across all three, to be honest.
Okay. And same for yourself, Neil, because obviously you're working in a slightly different space, but also, we've worked closely with GDI on some of the funding and development of your technology. But yeah, what you see are sometimes maybe some of the barriers that we're seeing for adoption and fast tracking of best practice.
I think, yeah, so in terms of some of the barriers that we have, it is very difficult. We talked earlier on about some of the guidance and the guidelines, and actually some of these haven't moved along as quick as the technology has and quick as the opportunities that we have, and we're having to be really smart actually to articulate them properly to really help us move on and make some commitments. It's very difficult for operators at the moment that fine line between the budget constraints and committing into change. So part of that, how to get over that, it's sort of about co-developing roadmaps, understanding the true problem of the operator itself, so where we can make the most improvements, i.e. removal of people offshore to bring down that cost, to improve the safety, and just try and help be efficient as possible.
And Jason, are we seeing a little bit more of a collaborative effort between the end user operators and the supply chain, the developers? You know, is there a bit more of a, sometimes there's always been seen as a technology push, we're pushing technology into the market, and it's a bit of a challenge and maybe less of a pull. But is there a shift in that? Are you seeing that shift?
Yeah, certainly subsea, we're starting to see that, and what the guys are saying is resonating as well. So traditional energy, oil and gas, you know, there's almost a paradox there, if that makes sense. So the very people who need the new technology, particularly AI, are quite rightly risk averse, etc. as well. But those guys that are developing it need data, you know. So when you do your startup, they need good, trusted data. They need subject matter experts to be guiding them. And when they're building their models, for example, they need people like Grant and the team to be saying, this is correct, this is not correct as well. So there's almost a paradox. So we are seeing that shift ourselves. We see that, you know, operators coming together, sharing their data as well. And there's almost a duty for the digital companies that are established to be bringing through this new technology, so that companies and operators, Grant, I'm picking on you a lot today, it's the pain of being an operator, but you know, that they have this trust, that they understand that risk is there, and that tools have been developed that they can slot into their workflows. Does that make sense? So they can optimize, trust, adapt and adopt into their workflows as well. So I see this happen in subsea, and I think it's something wider, particularly data sharing and technology sharing, you know, within the blue economy. I'm starting to see that shift. Yep.
And I'm going to maybe loop in Grant just to close out this part in terms of trust. And there was a question that came through in the chat about how can we create that trust between operator and third party? And is that very much then the fact that if we can work together on, you know, understanding the challenges and coming up with the solutions, does that help?
Yeah, I think historically, I've seen it. I was on the other side of it for a number of years, and you almost couldn't do right for doing wrong. The being able to deliver against an expectation where the operator didn't even know what they wanted, and when it wasn't delivered, the service companies get banged over the head. So there's a really big piece around the operator's responsibility to define scopes and to define expectations so that they can be measured and managed accordingly. We can't learn from, you look at the aviation industry, I know Gareth's on here, but online, but the aviation industry is a really good example, and so is the NHS with their ability to adopt just culture. That if it's adopted correctly, the one big thing that resonated with myself from the aviation industry is their ability to acknowledge and recognize when things go right, because we do things a lot right, but we talk about things that are wrong and it seems to have a louder voice. So a lot of the aviation industry, and you'll see it with pilots when they finish a flight and stuff like that, but when we finish scopes, what we should be doing is you should be going, this is what we've done well, this is what's worked, this is what we need to take more of and weave in and out of our processes to make them stronger. We don't do that enough. What we do is we look at the things that we didn't do right and we try and fix them all the time. Because as engineers, we're predisposed to try and fix problems instead of championing the things that we're good at. And we're good at jumping to the next shiny thing. So as operators, we have to set that bar. We have to then champion and celebrate success more. And I think it goes back to something you asked earlier, was how do you then get the industry to recognize the improvements with integrity? That is celebrate success. because that builds trust, it builds consistency, and that's where you'll get further adoption, greater adoption at scale.
So again, I'm going to be bringing in Neil on this one, and for the others, please jump in. We've talked, trust seems to be the running theme now, how we've gone down to this, but that's fine. That's a great way to. Do we trust in each other enough to share our data and our learnings as an industry? I mean, we've talked about the associations, industry-led groups and that. But are we actually truly collaborating and sharing? Because we talk about AI, we talk about digital, and we all know the more data you have, the bigger improvement. So are we ever going to be in that position to be really trusting and sharing that information?
I'm not sure we'll ever get there, not through integrity stuff, but I think sort of tying back to some of the stuff that Grant was talking about, you do that by building relationships. You start on small stuff, you go along the journey together, you have shared goals. A lot of us now, certainly in the UKCS, have shared goals of longevity and trying to make things as valuable as possible. It's about doing small things, picking up the pace and failing fast, knowing that it's going to be a bit of a rough road. There's going to be some missteps, etc., and understanding that and accepting that and just continuing to move forward. As I say, I don't think we'll ever fully hit that perfect trust. But yeah, the longer we spend together, the more we work together and do share some of that information, the better place we're going to be for the operators and for the vendors.
I think.
Sorry.
I was just going to say there that I think that's very true. And I think, you mentioned there when it comes to integrity, it kind of gets, nobody wants to talk about potential issues, but the reality is, all operators or clients, they have very similar issues. So the chances are something that you're really struggling with, someone else has already dealt with, and there's a solution out there, whether it's Stats or anyone else. There's solutions out there. So as everybody said there, it's about sharing that, being a bit more vocal, joint presentations at industry events and things like that, to really kind of this is the problem we had, this is the problem we expect others will have, and this is how we went about fixing that problem. And there is a little bit, that is a little tricky when it comes to integrity, because you're kind of, it's admitting issues that you perhaps don't want to really expose more widely, but it is beneficial to industry to have that kind of open dialogue, I think.
I think that comes back to process leadership, though, doesn't it? You don't need to share your dirty underwear, but you can easily put out the washing line. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, you can give an overview without, it doesn't need to be that detailed. It's just the general issues that may be there that are your common issues with, on a lot of platforms, etc.
But then I suppose if there is a facility or somewhere that people can share. I mean, I'm not talking about maybe in the open public domain, because as we say, we don't want to potentially put that out there. But if there is a function, we've thrown these collaborative bodies and that to maybe help share. Jason, again, is this something that you think there's a great need and an opportunity, and how do we move it? Because we're all saying we want to be able to share it, but nobody seems to be taking that step just yet.
Yeah. But we're trying it. It's happening slowly. So, Rebecca, you're aware we've got Compass. We're with 5 of the biggest. I'm not allowed to say names, of course, but if you find them, and they're slowly moving into that area where they're going to allow us to roll up sandboxes, to train these models as well. If you can imagine, we hold in some cases 25 plus years of data. And that's so valuable because it is trusted, it has been checked, and it's sitting there ready for use. With similar problems as well. So if you can roll this up, not anonymize it, but by allowing third parties and even ourselves to expand on that data across 5 big data sets, then the signs are positive. And I think that's been driven just again by this realization that collaboration is going to be the key, in integration as well. So it's happening, but it's slow. But we're in a nice position that we've got movement there. Top sides, that's another kettle of fish.
I think so touching into that, I mean, we're now starting to get the systems that do allow us to hold that data. We're talking about APIs and things like that, tying into different sort of core softwares that allow us to share an element of the data, a part of the data that allows us to use it without actually sending it across in an email or sitting it within a sort of an area that can be easily accessed by all. So we are starting to see those systems. We are starting to see that APIs being built across different businesses, vendors, and operators. So we are starting to see it. Things like this, the OGV Live, where we're discussing topics, maybe not going into the depth, but again, that's us sharing information. And some of the work that we do with our clients, where we have shared user forums to talk about those problems, is really starting to pay dividends. Some of the registration work that we've been doing has actually been a collaboration through a number of clients telling us where their main problem areas are and how we can fix them as the discipline experts.
So thank you, guys. I'm going to move us into the next session, in session 3, and just to kind of bring some of these conversations to a close. By all means, please stay on if you want to continue to contribute to the conversation, because we'll move it into a slightly different area. But moving into session 3, I would like to welcome Adam Armstrong, the Engineering Director at Impulse Group, David Barnyard, the Technical Authority at 360 Energy, and Stuart Reynolds, Integrity Team Lead from EngTech, CAN's Engineering Group. So welcome, guys.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
For some reason, Adam might be a bit shy. So I will, as with the other sessions, I'll ask you to do a quick intro, and then we'll open up a bit of a discussion. And so over to David. Please introduce yourself.
Oh, crumbs. Okay. David Barnard, I'm Technical Authority in Flexible Pipes at 360. I've been working with flexible pipes for 25 years now, with installers, operators, design, manufacture. First came across them in the late 90s when I was a structural engineer for FPSO conversions. So,
thank you, David.
Yeah.
Stuart.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me. I'm Stuart. I've been in the integrity industry for about 15 years. 10 of that is now with CAN and specifically with EngTech. I work on the topside pressure systems, process piping, and vessels.
Perfect. And Adam, are we having some technical issues? Are you hearing us and able to introduce, or are you? I think we'll come back to Adam if he is maybe having potential technical issues. So we've, I don't know if you guys have been following the conversation. So we started off in the guideline side of things, and we've jumped into maybe some of the technical, which has very been focused on data. But I want to maybe take it to a slightly different element, because these two, and trust has been the theme coming through this. So probably from yourself, David, because you're coming from a slightly different, I think we've talked probably more focused on top sides and a bit more of the standard approach to asset integrity. But obviously coming from a sort of pipeline flexibles background, etc. Are you seeing what's good looking like for you in terms of overall asset integrity? And is there anything that other parts of the life cycle of asset integrity could learn from some of the work that you're seeing being done?
I don't know. Yeah. When you say the other parts, you mean like the top sides can learn from
top
this?
sides, yeah, or static equipment and because each element of the asset integrity management for the different types of assets or equipment can learn from each other.
I don't know. So if I didn't get any briefing or heads up for what we were going to talk about today, so perhaps Stuart or Adam could start ahead of me, and come back to me so I can have a moment to think.
No problem. Hopefully Adam's now joined us loud and clear. So Adam, could you introduce yourself and we can kick off the conversation a bit?
Yeah, I'm Adam Armstrong, Director of Engineering at this group. So we predominantly specialise in integrity management and design and servicing of simply flexible rise flow lines. So sorry, I missed the question a little bit earlier. But yeah, broadly, we're noticing quite a bit of, as we do our analytic tests and investigations into rises. So we are noticing, lack of maintenance in quite a few areas. That the difference between not maintaining an event path is massively detrimental.
Oh, I think we are still having some technical issues with Adam, so I'm going to jump into Stuart just to get this conversation going. So there is actually a question come in that I think is, quite significant in the sense of the aging workforce and how are we attracting, how are we proactively addressing some of the skills gaps across the integrity management sector. We kind of touched on it at the beginning with Grant, but yeah, Stuart, how are you seeing within your sort of side of the business?
So on the top side, we have a lot of aging personnel. So a lot of the OIEs have been in the industry for a while. So technicians come up, there's maybe 4 or 5 technicians, and then you've got 1 OIE. So they're all kind of fighting for those slots. So a lot of the guys are getting a lot of good experience to try and get into these positions. And I think as the OIE start to retire, a lot of that experience needs to be diluted down into the techs.
And how are we capturing that knowledge? Because this is not just related to asset integrity. This is across the whole energy sector as a whole, as we have an aging workforce and emerging skills gaps. So how are we capturing that knowledge? Or is there a significant gap in that and we need to work together to try and capture that knowledge as it's potentially leaving our industry?
Yeah, I think there is a gap there. So we do hold a lot of kind of training sessions with our OIEs and with technicians to try and kind of take these guys' experience and teach the younger guys, teach our graduates that come in and teach, even myself, I've been in here for 15 years, and the OIEs that have been offshore for years still teach me things every day. So it's a good communication, I think, is the best way to do it.
Yeah,
it is difficult to take this, but it's to take years of knowledge and kind of dilute it down to people who are not as experienced is, I think it's a very difficult thing to manage, but communication is key to that.
Can I, so Stuart, just on the back of that, so you guys operate globally as well. So
absolutely,
I've had the fortunate opportunity to work internationally. Is it a North Sea thing though? Because I also know that in a lot of other locations globally, I think because of the way we've set up integrity management and roles and that offshore, we have a real reliance on OIEs in the North Sea. And if you go anywhere else in the world, that's not the case. The OIE is a coordinator role, and you're reliant on pressure equipment inspectors to conduct inspections. In the UK, we seem to have fallen foul of a reliance on OIEs to be the key competent person offshore, and we supplement that with probably lower skilled, lower paid workforce.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I know maybe it's a commercial decision, and that's comes down to the commercial side. Do they want to put techs out or put more experienced people out, but guys that come at a higher cost? So is it are they putting the pounds before the experience and getting the guys who are actually going to be better at the job?
Yeah, and it's interesting because at the Future Oil and Gas, this comes back to AI and data and experience again. One of the big things that came out of that was human in the loop. And in order to have the human in the loop, you have to have someone that's experienced. But what you end up with in a few years' time will be people that are experienced will be paid handsomely because they're required. And there's no one coming up behind them to gain the experience to take over them positions, because there's opportunities for optimization of certain tasks. So will this problem, like Mark has kind of highlighted, will this problem then become exacerbated by our own desire to improve and adopt new technologies.
I'm going to bring it. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Sorry, sure. On you go.
Yeah, go.
No, leave it to answer, Grant.
Yeah, I think it will get more difficult as the positions get harder to fight for. So, yeah, as you lose experience, guys, and you trust more AI tools. But yeah, my personal opinion is I don't think AI tools is 100% the way to go. You need to keep training guys because AI is not going to be able to do everything. We still need eyes and ears in the integrity industry to see past the data that AI can't see past.
So I'm going to take this into a slightly different challenge then, and hopefully, Adam, we've got a slightly better connection. And I'll bring you in on this one, potentially just for your thoughts and opinion. We're talking about an aging workforce. We're talking about a skills gap. We're talking about almost how do we attract the next generation into our industry. Now, whether it's an oil and gas industry or an energy industry, or, is an asset integrity is a discipline in its own right. So bringing asset integrity engineers in. Is there a real place for having more remote operations in terms of having less people offshore, using remote command centres? I've recently been at a company who have adopted this quite heavily, especially in the subsea market, and even talking to the people that are working in these remote centres. They get to go home at night, they get to be with their families. Is that how we need to move their industry forward, which is keeping the person in the loop, but maybe using other tools? Adam, have you got any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think that is, it probably goes very much in the same vein as Stuart's comment, where keeping the person in the loop is critical for both, on time, at time maintenance and inspection, but also somebody to intervene. Because if there is something that needs a person there to action something, and to be there, to be able to see it, to be able to feel it, to be able to measure it, and having somebody at the installation, at the controls, the physical controls, and not just over a connection is. I don't think you can really remove that. Certainly not, on a blanket case. I know there's some, not permanently manned installations out there, and I've worked for delivering products for a few of them. But I think on the whole, I understand the draw of a regular working life, being able to, go to work and go home, and because most people don't know about, rotations and, but I think the industry we're in is a very unique one in that, that it's, I think it's, having people on site is, I don't want to use the word inescapable, but I think it's from a safety background and a concern of having somebody able to be present and see things that sensors can't is a big deal.
So I'm going to bring David into this because, sorry.
Interject? Yeah, I was just going to point out the vast majority of assets that we look at are subsea. So putting someone on site doesn't achieve anything. You can only get so close. Obviously, with risers, lots of companies do annulus testing and various things, and we can go and look at them. And but you don't necessarily need to have engineers on site, and that's why more and more I talk with office space integrity engineers, be them in Brazil or Kuala Lumpur or wherever. We tend to deal with the office space workers. There's usually one person who's offshore in the group in the discussions, but primarily I will deal with guys who go home, people who go home each evening and weekends and whatnot. So more and more, though, we are dealing with creating software to help manage the integrity. We all look at your KPIs on a monthly basis. Well, that's all fairly simple to automate. And some of the things 360 are looking at now is producing systems where we take the data, the historical data, the current data, and sort of use that to track into the future. So we're presenting our clients with data that says, you know, if you are running at this temperature, this is the life of this riser from a thermal degradation point of view. So, and this is all fairly straightforward, but it's stuff that's done in an office. So, yeah, we don't particularly deal, or I don't particularly deal with people offshore a lot, but that's because the assets I'm dealing with are underwater.
Yeah.
And I think this comes back to, I know I'm conscious we're coming to a close, but also this is a topic that's obviously got a lot of different elements. And one of the things is, we've talked about them people, and it's that bringing on the new talent. And our company's actually willing to invest in that. I mean, Stuart, we kind of touched upon it a little bit with Grant there about, you know, are we driving down the costs? Is it the hourly rates or the contracts that we currently? So for a supply chain to be able to invest in that talent, to bring that talent on board, is that a constraint that we're seeing? Rather than
we're definitely we've always had a graduate engineer. So yeah, this is as FlexLife, small company. There's 18 of us. 16, 18 of us, and we've always had a graduate engineer which we're bringing on, and then they often, after a few years, go on to bigger and better things, and we take another one on and we train him, and we've, in the time I've been with FlexLife, that's 3 we've brought on. So yes, I would say the industry does do its part to help with the graduates.
Yeah, I think from an Ithaca perspective, we've had a really healthy graduate program for a number of years, and summer interns and stuff like that. But also probably a good shout out to John as well. I know he just mentioned in the private comments, I was trying to find a time to kind of slot it in, was Amu's got a guidance called 232, and when I took on the role from Chevron to Ithaca, we based a lot of our procedures and our approach to third-party engagement around the guidelines of 232, which is third-party service companies and contracts, and we built it around that. But on the other side of that as well, and I've been working with Stefan quite a lot recently. I think we talk about a lot of graduates, and I'm an ex-veteran, I am a veteran, not ex. Amu is now working with the military for pathways to be able to get veterans or people looking to come out of the military access to Amua and to the sort of them areas. Because when we start to talk about cost, training, the opportunities that are there with veterans, I know CAND for years has always looked and used from a rope access perspective, always looked to use ex-military personnel because of that. But there's even more so reason to do it now, because the amount of investment that the military's got with AI, their space program, all things like that, these guys are being trained up by the military. They're coming out, good discipline, good understanding of safety. They've operated in a number of environments. They've got an exceptional amount of training already that we probably don't even realize they're getting, because the military have been pushing a lot of this technology and a lot of this stuff for a long time. And there's an opportunity there, not just around graduates, I think, but definitely around ex-forces to utilize within the engineering and the offshore sectors.
Stuart, I'm going to again open this up and I'll come to Adam because I think this is quite an important sort of part of the closing sort of session here. Okay, are you seeing that people are willing to take on early career and that they're willing to coach and mentor and really garner that talent?
Yeah, absolutely. I really enjoy teaching a lot of the graduates that come in. So we got quite a lot of technical assistants and graduates coming straight out of university. I was one of them 15 years ago. So I can see myself in that position. So I kind of like to push and try to educate people. And I think in EnergyTech we do that.
And Adam, your thoughts on?
Yeah, I think there's the ability of the mentor to almost keep themselves fresh and in the loop, because it's also that use it or lose it thing. If you could leave, you could get your engineering degree and you leave university and you go and get your job, and it might not be, it might be more of a project engineer and not a structural or not a stress type of job that you've got, that but you've still got it. You've still got it in there, and the taking on the new guys, the new graduates, the act of mentoring the younger ones, the newer ones, it keeps you in the loop, and it keeps you excited about the engineering, about the reason that you started it in the first place, and it makes it we find it makes it more of it makes the team more of a whole, if you know what I mean. And you see it in the office where somebody will, if you watch what people are doing, somebody will have a problem, and then you see chairs sort of scoot around that person where they've somebody said, has anybody done such and such before? And people will gather around, pointers will be pointed and suggestions had, and then everybody sort of disappears back to their desk, and then it'll happen but to somebody else later, and they all gather, and it's we've not done it as anybody having one specific mentor. It's just more of the way that we do it. So it's everybody's kind of free with their sort of hard-won knowledge over the years, that everybody's ready and willing to not push it onto the newer ones, but encouraging and pass it on. So we make a point of it. It's massively important, and it's attracting graduates into this sector, and especially for companies that aren't the big ones, not the big OEMs. It's a little bit difficult because people have heard of Technip and NOV and Baker and stuff like that. So they're always there's openings there because they're massive companies, but bringing them into the smaller firms and attracting good talent, you have to be an employer of choice, and part of that is having that environment that encourages the newly qualified guys.
And that, I think, does bow to Mark's comments, whereas he's talked about a lot of young people are now ruling out careers in oil and gas, or be it maybe the energy sector, because it is seen to be outdated and unsustainable, etc. And I do think, just as a general sort of oversight, and we need to be able to brand ourselves to say there are great opportunities for travel and learning new skill sets, and we need to actually do think about how we refresh our whole talent acquisition and selling with industry, as actually it's a fantastic industry to work in, and it's a disciplined approach, whether it's an integrity engineer to a wells engineer to a process. You know, we can all be specialists in the net zero and the shiny things that maybe people are more attracted to, but we're all here as part of the energy ecosystem. So I think we all need to take a bit more responsibility to showcase that it is a great place to work, a great industry to work in. So I am conscious of time, and I am going to bring this to a close. So I would like to say thank you very much to wrap up this OGV live event on asset integrity. And I think we've touched a lot of different subjects, and I do know, and I want to leave us again with a little bit of a closing remark. I think it was one of the comments that was talking about trust. We've talked about trust a lot today and about talent and that. And I think we need to just have a bit of a think about the black boxes that we've talked about in AI, and are we really fully understanding that? And I think that's probably one of the key areas of what asset integrity looks like in the future, of being able to understand where digital plays a huge part in this evolution in our sector. So I would just like to say thank you to all of our guests. I do look forward to speaking to you all again next month. Well, maybe me, not personally, but there will be another event looking at drilling and wells, and that's on Thursday, August the 21st. So please dial in and hear what fantastic work's been done in the drilling and well space. So once again, thank you for joining us, and we will hopefully see you next month.